She's just here for free food, Aunt Valerie sneered, loud enough for the whole table to hear. The laughter hit instantly, sharp, echoing through the gold-lit hall like a slap that never ended. Glasses clinked, cousins smirked, and my mother, Karen, froze mid-bite. Her fork trembled, her smile tried to hold, but her eyes begged me not to react. I didn't. I simply smiled. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The chandelier above flickered, throwing streaks of silver across the polished floor as if even the lights didn't want to witness this humiliation. The smell of champagne and roses clung to the air, fake sweetness for fake people. Valerie leaned closer, her red lips curling. Honestly, Chloe shouldn't have even invited her. She's unemployed, single, and barely surviving. What's she even wearing? That looks like it came from a clearance rack. Chloe, her perfect bride of a daughter, giggled beside her. Mom, stop, she said softly, but the smirk on her face said otherwise. I folded my napkin neatly, my voice calm but razor sharp. You always talk like you know everything about me, Aunt Valerie. You might want to update your information. The laughter softened into murmurs, but Valerie couldn't resist. Oh, sweetheart, denial isn't empowerment. You're not fooling anyone. A few people chuckled. My mother dropped her gaze, pretending to adjust her bracelet. I looked around that glittering room. People I'd known my whole life, realizing not one of them had ever actually seen me. And then, just as I placed my glass down, a man in a black suit appeared beside me. Clean-cut, earpiece tucked discreetly behind his ear. He leaned forward slightly and said in a respectful, steady tone, Ms. Bennett, your helicopter is ready. We can depart whenever you're ready. The table went silent. Forks stopped clinking. Jaws froze mid-smile. Valerie blinked fast. Heli, what? I looked up at Ryan, completely composed.
Thank you, Ryan.
Give me a minute. Yes, ma'am. He nodded and stepped back. All eyes were on me. I stood slowly, the soft fabric of my midnight blue gown catching the light as it brushed the floor. Excuse me, I said, offering a small smile that held more power than anger ever could. Seems I have somewhere to be. Valerie stammered. You're joking, right? A helicopter? Since when? I turned, eyes locking on hers. Since I stopped explaining myself. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Even Chloe looked pale. I walked through the stunned crowd, each step echoing through the ballroom. Murmurs followed, rushed, confused, panicked. Someone whispered, she's lying. Another hissed, no one calls her ma'am unless. The glass doors swung open, revealing the night sky shimmering with city lights. The rhythmic thump of rotor blades pulsed through the air, each beat heavier than the last. The wind caught my hair as the helicopter waited on the manicured lawn, sleek and black under the moonlight. As I approached, I glanced back. Valerie stood frozen by the doorway, her hand gripping her clutch, so tight her knuckles whitened. Karen, my mother, looked at me like she didn't recognize the woman standing before her. Olivia, she called, voice trembling. Where are you going? I paused, meeting her eyes. Home, I said quietly. Some of us actually built one. Then I turned and stepped into the helicopter. The blades roared, drowning out the chaos below. As the aircraft lifted off, the scene below grew smaller. The music, the laughter, the fakeness fading into nothing but bits of gold on the ground. Ryan's voice came through the headset. Destination confirmed, ma'am? Yes, I said, staring out the window as the city lights blurred beneath us. Let's go to the office. I want to review the acquisition before the market opens. Understood. I leaned back in my seat, watching the skyline drift past. They had mocked the woman they thought was struggling. But they had no idea the company that had just purchased Valerie's husband's entire business empire was mine. And tonight, that truth would change everything. The city looked different from above. Quiet, organized, almost peaceful. But I knew better. Down there were the same people who laughed when I struggled, the same ones who had smiled in my face while whispering behind my back. The helicopter landed on the rooftop pad of Bennett Holdings, my company. The letters glowed white against the glass building. My company. Something I'd built from sleepless nights, broken confidence, and the kind of pain that turns weakness into steel. Ryan stepped out first, offering his hand to steady me as the wind whipped around us. "Welcome back, ma'am," he said. I gave a small nod, my heels clicking against the concrete. "Let's finalize the Brooks account tonight," I said. Ryan hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do that now?" "Yes," I replied. "I think it's the perfect time." Inside, the office smelled of lavender and power. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, and my reflection stared back at me, poised, calm, untouchable. But my mind was on Valerie. 3 years ago, she'd humiliated me in front of the entire family after my father's passing. I had inherited nothing, not even a keepsake. She'd called me a girl with no future. What she didn't know was that after my father died, his silent business partner, Thomas Reed, had reached out to me privately. "Your father believed in you," he had said. "And so do I." He left me control of his half of the company, the one that would later grow into Bennett Holdings. By the time the elevator doors opened to my office, Ryan was already laying documents on my desk. "Here's the acquisition file. Brooks Realty is officially yours, pending your signature." I froze. Brooks Realty, Valerie's husband's firm. "Transfer every asset into our name by morning," I said quietly. Ryan's brow furrowed. "You sure you want to do it like this?" I looked at him sharply. She's been laughing at my supposed failures for years. Let's see if she can laugh when her home mortgage and her husband's company both report to me. He nodded. Understood. As the hours passed, the office lights dimmed, replaced by the blue glow of screens. I stared at the final document and whispered, "For every word you ever threw at me, Aunt Valerie, consider this my answer." The next morning came fast. At 9 a.m., Valerie's husband, Robert Brooks, stormed into my office, face pale, tie loosened. "You can't do this," he shouted. "You can't just buy out my company overnight." I rose slowly from my chair. "Actually, Mr. Brooks, I can." And I did. All legal. All public. He slammed a fist on the desk. "You think this is funny? You'll ruin my family." I tilted my head, my voice calm but cutting. "You mean the same family that ruined me at every family gathering? The one that called me worthless?" He fell silent. "I'm not here for revenge, Mr. Brooks," I said, walking around the desk. "I'm here for respect. And maybe this is the only language people like you understand." Just then, my assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Ms. Bennett, your 10 a.m. visitor is here." The door opened. Valerie walked in, her expression proud at first, until she saw the documents spread across my desk. She froze. "Olivia? What is this?" I smiled faintly. "Welcome to Bennett Holdings. I suppose congratulations are in order, since you're technically working for me now." Her jaw dropped. This can't be." "Oh, but it is," I said softly. "Remember last night, when you said I was just here for free food? Turns out, I'm the one who paid for that entire wedding venue. I own it." Her face drained of color. I leaned closer, my tone calm but unyielding. "You taught me something, Aunt Valerie. You taught me how cruel people can be when they think you're powerless. But you forgot, some of us rise quietly." She blinked rapidly, voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," I said. Just a little silence for once. Then I turned back to my desk as she stood there, speechless. For the first time, the power she'd used to humiliate me crumbled in her hands. And the satisfaction wasn't just revenge, it was freedom. Because I didn't just rise above them, I outgrew them. The headlines hit the next morning like wildfire. Bennett Holdings acquires Brooks Realty overnight. Every business page, every local news channel, every social feed, her name was everywhere. I didn't need to check the comments to imagine the whispers. Wasn't she the one who mocked Olivia at the wedding? Funny how tables turn when arrogance meets karma. From my office window, The city gleamed under morning sunlight, but in my chest was only stillness. I hadn't slept. Revenge should have felt sweet, but all I felt was hollow. Ryan entered quietly, placing a folder on my desk. Reporters are calling nonstop. They want to comment. Tell them no statement, I said.
He nodded.
Valerie's trying to reach you.
Of course she was.
I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at the skyline, the city I'd fought tooth and nail to conquer. The city that once ignored me. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. What did you do, Olivia? Valerie is devastated. I closed my eyes, the memory of last night flashing in fragments. The laughter, the humiliation, the way my mother hadn't said a single word in my defense. Maybe I'd done this for her too. Or maybe I was lying to myself. An hour later, I stepped into the lobby of Brooks Realty, now under my ownership. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Employees whispered as I passed, their gazes darting away. They all knew who I was, the woman who had bought out their arrogant boss in one night. Valerie was waiting inside Robert's old office. The blinds were half drawn, sunlight slicing through the air in narrow beams. Her makeup was smudged, her hands trembling slightly as she stood. Olivia, she said, her voice small, cracking.
Please.
You've made your point. Don't destroy everything we've built. I paused in the doorway, cold but calm. Everything you've built? Or everything you took credit for while humiliating others? Tears welled in her eyes. I was cruel, I admit that. But this is ruining families.
Mine.
Yours. I laughed softly. Family? You remember that word now. Her voice broke. I was jealous, all right? You had something none of us did.
Grace.
Kindness. People liked you even when you had nothing. And I couldn't stand it. For the first time, I saw not arrogance, but fear. Not pride, but guilt. Valerie's next words came like a confession she'd been choking on for years. When your father died, he left a letter. I found it first. It was addressed to you. I froze. What did you just say? She opened a drawer and slid an envelope across the desk. It was worn, creased, sealed with my father's handwriting. I kept it because I thought you didn't deserve it, she whispered. But now, I see I was wrong. My hands shook as I tore it open. My father's words were faded but clear. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you in person. You have more strength than anyone I know. Don't let them convince you that kindness is weakness. Build your world, but don't lose your heart doing it. A lump rose in my throat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Valerie stood there, tears silently streaking her face. Finally, I set the letter down and said softly, "You don't deserve forgiveness, but maybe you deserve peace." She blinked in disbelief. "You're not firing me?" "No," I said, "but you'll resign."
Today.
"And you'll make a public apology, not to me, but to every person you ever stepped on." Her shoulders sagged. "And after that?" "After that," I said, "you learn to live with what you've done." As I turned to leave, she called after me, voice trembling. "Olivia, I really am sorry." I didn't look back. "Then prove it." Outside, the wind brushed my hair as I stepped into the daylight. I looked up at the skyline, the same city that once made me feel invisible. Now, it bowed quietly around me, and for the first time, I understood what my father meant. Real strength isn't in revenge. It's in knowing when to stop. 3 days later, the world seemed to move slower. The gossip had cooled, the headlines faded, but my name hadn't. Olivia Bennett, once the poor cousin, was now being called the woman who turned humiliation into power. But behind every headline was a truth no one knew. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had only reminded me how deeply the wounds had gone. That evening, as I stood on my penthouse balcony overlooking the city, my phone buzzed again. It was my mother. I hesitated, then answered. "Olivia," her voice trembled. "Can I come over?" An hour later, she arrived. She looked smaller somehow, like the confidence she used to wear had cracked. She didn't wait for tea or small talk. She went straight to the point. I saw Valerie's interview, she said quietly. She told everyone the truth. About how she treated you. About the letter. I crossed my arms. And tears filled her eyes. And I realized I did the same thing, Olivia. I stood there while they laughed at you. I should have protected you. I was ashamed of how little you had, when I should have been proud of how strong you were. Her voice broke completely. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I really am. I stared at her, silent. Part of me wanted to turn away. Another part wanted to fall into her arms like a child again. Finally, I whispered, Do you know what hurt most, Mom? It wasn't their laughter. It was your silence. She covered her mouth, crying softly. I know. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the city below. Then I said, I built everything they said I couldn't. But it still feels empty when the people I love are strangers to me. She nodded. Then let's change that.
Please.
Let's start over. I hesitated. Then, slowly, I stepped forward. She reached out, and I let her hug me. For the first time in years, it didn't feel forced. When she pulled back, she smiled through tears. Your father would have been so proud. I exhaled, eyes glistening. Maybe now I can finally believe that. The next morning, I did something no one expected. I went back to Brooks Realty, my building now, and held a meeting in the main hall. Cameras, reporters, and employees filled the space. Valerie stood near the front, her posture tense, but composed. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at the crowd. Some of you know me as the woman who took control overnight. But that's not the story I want remembered, I said. I paused, letting my words breathe. The truth is, I was humiliated once.
Publicly.
By someone who thought my value depended on my status. And instead of defending myself, I built something from that pain. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that revenge isn't strength. Redemption is. Valerie lowered her head, tears brimming. I continued. So today, I'm appointing new management, people who've been overlooked for years. The ones who kept this company alive when no one gave them credit. Gasps rippled through the hall. And as for Mrs. Brooks, I said softly, I accept her apology. Cameras flashed. Reporters murmured. But I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. Valerie approached slowly, eyes wet. You didn't have to do that. I know, I said gently. But I'm tired of being defined by what hurt me. She nodded, voice shaking. Thank you, Olivia. I smiled faintly. Just don't waste it. Later, when I walked outside, the air felt lighter. Ryan was waiting near the black car, holding the door open. Heading home, ma'am? He asked. I looked toward the sky, where the faint hum of a helicopter echoed in the distance. No, I said, smiling softly. Let's take the long way. I think I've been rushing through life long enough. He smiled back. Yes, ma'am. As the car pulled away, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold, bright, alive, endless. And for the first time since that wedding, I wasn't escaping. I was simply living. Because power wasn't in the helicopter, or the company, or the revenge. It was in the moment I chose peace over pride. And that finally made me free.